That's something to be confident about, is knowing that we are part of a royal, the highest royal family. We are part of the king's family. Man, oh man. Isn't that something? You might have come from a family that didn't have hardly anything, but you know what? The richest one in all the universe that owns all things came to be a servant of servants so that you can be a part of a royal family. Hallelujah. Father, we thank you for this Passover, for this appointed time season. Yes, we know that, Abba, you know we're trying the best we know how. And we have congregated together. We have come to celebrate you and who you are and what you have done. So I pray and ask, Abba, that you would pour out a blessing, your bracha, your blessing upon every man and woman in here, every son and daughter that is in here, if they're a newborn or if they're an elderly, it doesn't matter. Father, I pray that you will bless them. Bless them. Let them know how much they mean to you. Hallelujah. Father, we ask for protection around this entire property while we're here. No weapon formed against us will prosper, because we're at your appointed time that you have commanded us to come to. So we thank you that there is no weapon formed against us that will prosper. There is no evil that can come upon us, neither shall any plague come near our dwelling. For you have given your angelic armies and soldiers of the highest order in the heavens charge over every soul that is in here and those who couldn't physically make it but desired to be. Wherever they are, protection. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen and amen. Hallelujah. Are you guys excited? So I want to say thank you to everyone that's set up in here. Thank you, guys. Let's give them a big hand clap. A big hand clap for Pastor Dave opening up and making this happen. Brittany Scott. Hallelujah. And everybody else. And everybody else. Hallelujah. I'm excited. I don't know what's going on, but I'm super excited. I was real calm sitting over here, but I'm excited. I have a teaching for today. And I titled this, I don't know if you guys have that up there. There we go. That's the title. That's what Passover has always pointed to. Did you guys know that? It pointed to its fulfillment and its ultimate power to break the grips of sin and death off of our lives because of his table. Our righteous king's table is the Passover table. You didn't hear what I said. You know what? When you know what he saved you from, you will always have a praise on your lips. The day we forget, Yah forbid, is when we become mute believers. We've got to have a praise and a thanksgiving on our lips at all times. He redeemed you. He redeemed us. Passover. Look to your neighbor and say, Passover. Don't look at me. You don't have to tell me because I know what I'm about to say. Look to your neighbor. I'm looking around. Don't look at me, nobody. Look to your neighbor and say, Passover is personal. Passover is personal. You had to experience Passover for yourself. Very personal. You couldn't say, well, my mama and daddy did it, so I'm good. Nope, that wasn't good enough. You have to experience the Savior for yourself. I said you have to experience the Savior for yourself. Hallelujah. So we're going to get right into this. The Melchizedek table. Everybody, can you repeat after me the words of the Messiah? Take and eat. I have a part of this subtitle is the threshold keepers of the covenant meal. How many covenant keepers are in the house? How many people just came because you were hungry? Covenant keeping meal. That's exactly what this is. Look to your neighbor again one more time and say, Chag Pesach Sameach. A joyful celebration of Passover. Amen? So I want to, if you, there's going to be a bunch of slides up here, and I'm going to just go through this revelation the Father gave me. I pray that you guys have hearts to receive. And in Exodus chapter 6, remember in Exodus 6, there are some statements from the Creator regarding the deliverance that was about to transpire with the nation of Israel, or should I say, the sons of Jacob, who were known as Hebrews back in Mitzrayim, right? But we know it's the nation of Israel. There were some I wills that were mentioned by Yahweh himself. And when we look at this, the I wills compared to the Messiah, the Mashiach's I wills in him have now transitioned to, as you could see up here. It's not him saying, I will deliver you, I will set you free, I will bring you out from the bondage of the Egyptians, I will take you as my bride. He's saying, I have brought that now. Take a bite of your matzah bread on the table. I have delivered you from Mitzrayim. I have delivered you from Mitzrayim. I have. Someone might say, well, we're still going through hell on the earth. We have been delivered. Just like it says in the word, we are seated in heavenly places, but yet we're physically here. We have got to have that level of belief. I'm seated with the Messiah no matter what seems to transpire. I have been released from bondage. I have been redeemed. The Passover of old pointed to the pinnacle and the peak and the most powerful revelation of what Passover ever meant in Yeshua. So in him we could say this, I have been redeemed. He says, I have redeemed you. I have taken you as my bride, so he has done this in the name of Yeshua. Do you guys believe that? 1 Corinthians 1:18 says this, for the preaching of the cross or the tree, which is his altar, that's why I put that little part in there, is to them that are perishing foolishness. Some would say, but unto us. Say it like you really believe it. You heard Pastor Dave, what if this is the last one here? But unto us which are saved, it is the power. It is the authority of the Creator, Elohim. We are saved. Why? Because of the power of Elohim. Period. Passover begins, look to your neighbor and say, Passover begins. The cycle of the power of Elohim. Passover sets the pace for all the other appointed times. It's impossible. Listen, it is impossible for anyone to receive the power that is given on Shavuot without experiencing the Lamb for themselves. There's no way that the Ruach HaKadosh, the Holy Spirit, will dwell in a vessel that has not come through the door first. Passover's the door to everything else. Would you guys agree with that? So I want to give a little historical everything from the historical to the time of Yeshua. Bring out some revelations the Father dropped in my spirit, man. There's many sections in here. I was bawling in tears. You can ask my wife. I will come downstairs. Because this is so real. The appointed times are real. Did you hear what I said? These are real. What's happening around the world as we see, that's real. But this is even more so. This is a real time. Imagine that. Heaven and earth coming together in a moment of an appointed time, and that all together being tangible. That's how powerful the appointed times are. Where heaven and earth meet, and they're manifested in the midst of an appointed moment and an appointed time. So just bear with me for a little bit. After the arrival of Yeshua, And after his trial in the desert, I'm just going and giving a little historical insight. Remember, he was immersed into the Jordan River. And when he ascended from the Jordan waters, follow me now, I'm going to try to highlight the best that I can. When he ascended out of the Jordan waters, a voice spoke from heaven saying this. This is mind-blowing. I'm telling you, as simple as this is, we read this 1,000 times. This is my beloved son, hear him. Follow me, please. Who was there? The rightful high priest at that time, called John the Baptist, Yochanan HaMatbil, right? John the Immerser. The rightful high priest of Israel was present when the Creator said, hear him, my son. No longer this over here. It is time to hear my son, who has been the fulfillment of things that you've only hoped for some 1,500 years at that time. It's from this point forward that Yeshua would manifest his Father's name, and he would begin his Melchizedek ministry in preparation for his bride's redemption and sanctification. Is that beautiful or what? These words actually still, to this very day, they shout louder than ever before. The same words still shout louder like a shofar, louder and louder and louder. Just like at Mount Sinai, remember the shofar got louder and louder. That's how you know it was not natural, it was supernatural. It was getting louder and louder and more powerful. Why? Because it was pointing to something that we're doing to this day. This is my beloved son, hear him. So we are to do something, and it's called Shema. Look to your neighbor and say Shema, or Shema, which means to hear and obey. So we're to Shema him, especially in this season called Passover. Chag HaMatzot, Yom HaBikurim, the week of unleavened bread, the feast of first fruits, everything pointed to him. In Luke 22, verse 14, it says this, and when the hour had come, he sat down with his disciples, the 12 that were with him. Let me keep going here. I got something that just, okay, my computer was acting up. He sat down with his disciples, and he said to them, with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before my suffering. So I have a question. Was that the Passover that Yeshua was at? According to his words? It's really not a trick question, I promise. Let me keep moving forward. He said it, that settles it, right? Okay. So he says, with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you. I want you to catch his words. So they're sitting during a Passover time. He said, I've desired to eat this Passover with you before my Passover. I've desired to bring something to a close in order to introduce something much more powerful. As you could see, the words, I put them up in red for you guys to look at that. Verse 16, for I say to you, I shall certainly not eat of it again until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of Elohim. And then taking the cup, he gave thanks. He said, take this and divide it among yourselves. To take what? The revelation that he just brought to them. As he's speaking, the words coming out of his mouth attached to the things that he was getting ready to distribute to the disciples, the apostles at that time. So they had something tangible that was connected to something eternal. Just follow me, because I don't want to mess anyone up, but this is going to be a very unique insight. Taking the cup, giving thanks, he said, take this and divide it amongst yourself, for I say to you, I shall certainly not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of Elohim comes. And taking bread, he gave thanks, and he broke it and gave it to them, saying that bread is called bread that is raised up. He was giving them, think about this, the Messiah was doing stuff that was just out of the ordinary, that almost seemed like it went against what was written, but it really didn't. He was bringing the spirit out of what has always been. So what he's saying to them, I want you to take. Everyone, do me a favor. Grab a piece of that matzah on your table. Grab a piece of that matzah real quick. Haste. Everything's haste at Passover. Grab a piece of that right away. Imagine yourself sitting at the table and Yeshua says, take and eat, for this is my body. Remember, it's called artos in Greek. It just means lifted up bread. All right? We'll leave all that other stuff alone. But what he was demonstrating to them with the bread was, I'm letting you taste just a sample of the power of my resurrection right now. When they sat at that table. You can go ahead and eat that if you want. Some of us need a whole lot of it, right? I need to resurrect out a whole lot of stuff. Bring in the loaf. This is my body which is given for you. Do this. Do this. Do this. Let me back up. Hear him. And then him, do this. The Father says, hear my Son. And my Son said, do this. There's end of discussion. Do this in remembrance of me, not that. That pointed to me, but now that the fulfillment has come, each time you come together, do this in remembrance of me. Oh my goodness, thank you, Abba. He held, you guys, he held the only power, he held the only authority to break this bread. Only the Lamb did. The Lamb alone has the authority to break the bread. Please follow me. To reveal the mystery that has been hidden inside of it for some 1,500 years and even before that, at that time. The Lamb breaks the bread so that the Lion of the tribe of Judah can come and break the seals. The Lamb breaks the bread and makes way for the Lion to come and break the seals. Revelation 5. The Lamb stood silent. That means he accepted our guilt. Did you hear what I said? The Lamb was silent. The scripture says, and he made not a sound. The Lamb was silent as the word absorbed our penalty. So the Lamb stood silent so his blood can speak for you and I. I'm the only excited one. That's good. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So he says, do this Passover each time in remembrance of me. And it's in this season, you guys, of Passover, that a holy nation was born. Are you listening? It is this season that kings and priests are born. Will you guys give me about an hour and 15 more minutes? And then I'll be done. I'll be quiet and be silent like a lamb. Is that cool? So it's this season that kings and priests are born. You ought to pop your collar there in all encouragement because of him. Kings and priests. I'm looking at kings and priests in this room. If you don't see yourself as that, I'm looking at you as a king and as a priest. One who has ruling authority and dominion in him, and one who knows how to have conversation with heaven above. Priests. Do this in remembrance of me, correct? It's this season that his kingdom is awakened out of slumber, awakened out of sin, awakened out of bondage, and awakened out of death. And it is the Melchizedek touch. It is the Melchizedek, I want you to note this down, induction. By way of the covenant meal that we receive our Melchizedek Passover power. That's how this is in this time. And it's been like that for 2,000 years. We are to walk in the power of the Passover lamb that came to release something on our behalf. I'm going to get to some things soon. We cross over from death into life. We all should say hallelujah. I've faced death in my life many times, and it's just only because of Abba that bullet didn't hit me, them shotgun BBs didn't touch me, that knife didn't kill me, that fork didn't kill me, that truck didn't kill me, that car that hit me didn't take me out. You all have your own testimony because of the power of the Lamb. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Abba. We overcome. Look to your neighbor and say, I'm an overcomer. I'm not an undercover. I'm an overcomer. I'm not an undercover. I'm an overcomer. You got a lot of undercover agents of the enemy pretending to be a redeemed one. They're undercover, but we are more than conquerors. We are overcomers in him. Hallelujah. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here with fire and passion in my bones, and I'm not kidding. I'm excited because of him and because what he has done for us all, and all I'm doing is communicating something that he gave for us all here today. Can you give him a big shout and a praise? Hallelujah. We overcome. Can you guys hear me okay? We overcome. Look at how we overcome. Nothing that we had to do. Isn't that exciting? Because if we had to, wait a minute, God, I think we'd mess it all up. We'd be the fly in the ointment. It's all because of him, but here's why. You guys ready for the answer? You see it up there? Is it there? No, right? But I'm going to tell you what it is. We overcome. See, I'm an overcomer, not an undercover. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb. That's the Passover. And by the word of our testimony. That's the bread that is unleavened of the world. Unleavened bread of the world, but infused and totally leavened with the kingdom of heaven. Did you hear what I said? Some might say, that's not true. Sure it is. Matthew 13:33, I think it is, right in that area. Yeshua said, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman hid in 3 measures of meal. So to be unleavened means to be leavened with something else. You can't have an unleavened and a leavened mixture. You know, spiritually speaking, I don't even know if physically you can. No, it doesn't even work like that physically, right? It's either or, right? So if you're unleavened from the world, that means you're a leavened loaf of his kingdom. If you're leavened with the world, then you better devour all that matzah on that plate. Get all that unleavened out. But you get what I'm saying. It's either or. If you're unleavened, if you're leavened of the world, that means there's no kingdom in you. There's no starter for the kingdom in you. You've rejected it. But if you've accepted it, always starts with just a little starter piece to infect your whole life. That's why we've got to show mercy with those coming out. We can't expect them to just totally be changed and transformed unless there was a miracle. Why? It's a starter. The process. The kingdom leaven is in there, and as it begins to grow, it pushes out all the old stuff. Right? It pushes all the old stuff out. Let me keep going along because the Father has something for us here. So we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, that's Passover, and the word of our testimony, that's the bread of unleavened bread. It's the bread of unleavened. It's unleavened of the world and infused with the leaven of holiness. Did you hear that? With the leaven of holiness, Kedusha. That's what he is. He's called Kadosh. He says, I know what you are. You're not a Messianic. You're not a Hebrew roots. You're not a Christian. You're part of me, and I am holy. I am Kadosh. We are a set-apart people. We have an identity, and you find your identity under the blood-stained door of the house of the king. And you sit at a king's table. You know why they reclined? You know why they were chilling out that Passover night? Because for 210 years, they were slaves on their feet, not getting paid for what they really were worth. So that Passover night, that leaning on the pillow, laying back, they were telling Egypt, we are kings. We're no longer slaves to your system. We are a royal family, part of something bigger than this empire. And that's why you see the traditional leaning back on pillows and relaxing and resting. Is that all right? How many kings in the house? And the lady's like, well, I'm a queen. You're either a king. You know what I'm saying, royalty. Luke 22, verse 20 says, likewise, you know what I love about right now? The most exciting thing is we don't have a timer. Okay, good. I'm gonna get through this in a decent time, though, but thank you, Father. Luke 22, verse 20. Let's keep moving along because we got some good stuff here. Likewise, the cup also after supper, saying, this cup is the renewed covenant in my blood, which is shed for you. This phrase for this cup in Hebrew is called zekus. Can you say that? Zekus. The Messiah is holding up the cup, not any cup, the cup of redemption, the cup of substitution, the cup of purchase. He's holding that. He's saying this cup. Well, what do you know? That numeric connection to this cup is the same for segula. That is the title of the Messiah's bride, his treasured possession. So the cup he was drinking, right? The cup of redemption, the cup he allowed others to experience at the table there, the cup of covenant is him making a declaration saying, I am coming into a betrothal with my wife. I'm coming into a betrothal with my bride. Oh, man, oh, man. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven so that you are a new lump as you are unleavened. That means unleavened from the old system in the world. So I want you guys, just to make sure everyone's following me. What does unleavened mean again? Absence from the things of the world, right? So then if you're absent, unleavened of the world, then what are you filled with? Because you can't be vacant. You're filled with the leaven of the kingdom, like Yeshua said. It's one or the other. Would you agree with that? If not, Father, we pray for them. Let me keep moving on. For also the Messiah, our Passover, was offered up for us. So then let us observe the feast not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So this is kingdom bread. Did you get that? This is kingdom bread. To be unleavened of the world and the doctrines of men is to be leavened with the kingdom. So if you look at Passover and all these things, we're getting ready to look at more insights here. There's many connections to Passover. There's some simple things of knowing to some very deep revelations of Passover that will blow all of our minds. And this is a fact. So what does Passover look like, Pesach, in Yeshua? What does it look like in him now? Passover is the declaration of separation. And the induction, I want you to note that word down. It's a very interesting word. It is the induction into the Melchizedek order, as I said already as well. It's an induction into the dominion of this level of kingdom. And he was doing something at the table. He was attaching his disciples to his altar. And that is why they are called even apostles at that moment, at that table. He was connecting them to his work of redemption already. The Master's table reveals who we are to be in him now. Did you hear that? The table of the Master reveals who we are in him now. The Passover lamb of old pointed to the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. And this can be seen also as the Melchizedek matrimony ordination. The Melchizedek matrimony ordination into the very priesthood that has no father. Listen to me. We got to put the devil on notice and the demons on notice, and Satan saying, we've woke up out of tardame, out of a deep sleep. We are no longer asleep. We just found out who we are and what we are a part of. Something that has no father and no mother, that means the enemy has no access to. Oh my God. No father and no mother means, guess what, enemy? You have no access to it. Because if it had an origin of a father and mother, then it's connected to the fall. The enemy has legal access to whatever that is, no matter what it is. But this priesthood, this one, this priesthood can move mountains. This priesthood can cause valleys like the song to be raised up, mountains to be brought low. This priesthood can cause demons to run. This priesthood raises the dead. No father or mother, no beginning and no ending. No genealogical restrictions like generational iniquities and generational curses. There's no father and no mother to this priesthood. It is eternal. It's eternal. No genealogical restrictions at all that would give access to the enemy. Complete and whole and sealed with this covenant meal, confirming meal of the Messiah with his disciples at that Passover. Imagine that. Look at, even the enemy knew that his time had come up because he entered Judas. And Judas was pretty much possessed by Satan at that moment. But even the enemy knew, if they have this meal, listen to what I'm about to tell you. The meal, even in the temple times, even in the tabernacle, the holiest thing ever done in the temple and the tabernacle is when that high priest ate a meal before entering the Holy of Holies. The meal, you can read it's in Exodus and in Deuteronomy or Numbers. The meal is called Kadosh HaKedoshim. Even the meal's called the Holy of Holies. Very powerful. So the enemy knew, if they eat this meal, I'm done. I'm done. This was that powerful. It's a covenant confirming meal. You guys know that. A covenant confirming meal. So does Revelation say the Lamb? When you read the book of Revelation, does it say, is it talking about, behold the Lamb back in Egypt? Response. Is it talking about the Lamb back in Egypt? No, it sure didn't. It's talking about the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, right? That Lamb. Remember, I started off with what the Creator said, the Father said, this is my son. All right, you've seen all the other sons being born into the priesthood of Aaron and die off, but this is my son. Look at how the Father's saying, this is my son. I want you to hear him. If animals could speak, they'd all say, please don't put me back up on that altar. Hear him, remember? They're even smart enough. Please, they'd probably add in a please. Don't do it, please. Hear him, remember? I could hear it already. But we see there's all these different types of connections. The Passover lamb of old, it pointed to the Messiah himself, period. Pointed to him. So as I mentioned, does the book of Revelation say that the lamb back in Egypt comes, or is it the lamb slain before the foundation of the world? It's the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. So let's keep moving on. A nation of Hebrews were delivered, as I said in the beginning, out of, imagine, 210 years of bondage. The promise of 430 given from Abraham's promise all the way up to their deliverance, 430, 210 years of that 430 was bondage. Imagine that. This country has only been around for maybe, 280 years. So imagine 210 years of bondage under the empire of Mitzrayim has now come to an end. Imagine that. It's not going to make sense. There's no excitement, really. You don't see Israel, the Hebrews, getting excited. Because when you're in slavery for too long, hear what I'm going to say. When you're tied up with the very thing that's keeping you bound up and not free, when freedom is standing in front of you and that's all you know is bondage and all you're connected to through soul ties with bondage, when freedom comes, you just might be afraid of it. It was so foreign to them. There's so much that had transpired at that time. So 210 years of bondage. Mitzrayim was like a womb. Mitzrayim was like a womb. 210 has the same value of the Hebrew word hara. Say hara. Hara means to conceive or become pregnant. So the sons of Jacob that went down into Egypt, the time when other types of kings rose up to do things and that didn't know Joseph, guess what? Bondage was impending. The level of slavery had just skyrocketed, and guess what? the seed of the descendants of promise began to grow in the womb of Egypt. Not even real. Egypt knew something is wrong here. We are being pressed and expanded out in an unnatural way. What is happening? These Hebrews are multiplying way too fast for our empire. We're going to have to wipe them out. You can't kill the nation of Israel. You can't kill off the children of the Most High. You take 1,000 of them are saved and born again. You kill another one, 10,000 of more believers are coming forth. You cannot do away with the sons and daughters of the King of Kings. Why don't you look to your neighbor and say, you can't kill me? Not meaning your neighbor going to take you out, but let's reword that, all right? Let's reword it. Say, I never really die. You don't. Who you are? You can't be seated in heavenly places. And then when people say, oh, so-and-so's dead. No, they're not. They're alive. Their shell, the tabernacle has punched out. It's time for them to go home. Another Hebrew word there with those same letters, hara. So that 210 years was really a womb then, right? Hara can be hare, which means to come to the full term of pregnancy now. So the time for what would be known as a concealed, hidden nation had now come at that time in Egypt. The time for a concealed, hidden nation had now come, but the oppression had the climax. I'm speaking prophetically right now. The oppression, the restrictions had the climax in order for the baby to be seen pushing out of the belly of Egypt. Pushing already. The little legs are moving, the little hands, right? Mamas that are in here, you remember that. Daddies, right? You saw your wives, right? When they're pregnant, all of a sudden you see a hand. That's what's happening in Egypt at that time. The baby is moving. The firstborn called Israel is alive. Pharaoh, hey, Pharaoh, you thought you killed all the babies off in the Nile River. All you did was open up the floodgates of multiplication. Oh, so you want to threaten to wipe out a whole nation and generational line? Well, guess what? The Father says, you go ahead and attempt to do that. I'm even going to change and convert your Egyptian followers. You threaten them, we're going to save them. You threaten the firstborn, we're going to bring them in and adopt them. So you can't touch this. The womb of Mitzrayim, you guys, had reached its climactic 10 plague centimeters. And the firstborn nation called Israel had begun to crown. Oh, goodness, boy. Wow. Hallelujah. They were taken from a spiritual wasteland. I'm giving you the history without doing the traditional. You guys, you know what I'm saying, right? Where's my Haggadah? Where's my Haggadah? So the womb of Mitzrayim had reached that 10 plague climactic centimeter point, and here comes the crowning, the preparation of the firstborn. They were taken from a spiritual wasteland in Egypt and mercifully touched by the hand of Yahweh under the bloodstained door, and now born into a new life that was found in the teachings and would be found in the teachings of the covenant that would be given at Mount Sinai. It was the power of the blood of the Lamb and the altar that it was sacrificed upon that activated the voice of the blood which stood at each door and each door of life now in Yeshua. The altar activated the voice of the blood. Yeshua's blood would speak greater things than the lamb blood back in Egypt. But the lamb's blood back then represented a voice. And the voice was this: as Abba covers us like a hen does its chicks, When the Father's doing this, covering his own, the voice is standing at the inside of the door saying, death, you already know. Keep going. Get some more matzah. You guys can eat all that on the table. It's symbolic how Brittany was sharing, the traditional. Hallelujah. So in a sense, you guys, if you think about what I just mentioned, the altar and its voice that was over the doorpost of the homes in Goshen, the altar activated the voice. The altar over the doorposts put the altars of Egypt on notice. The blood that was, you need an altar in order for there to be a sacrifice, and then the sacrifice, the intent of the sacrifice is to get that blood. It's to get that blood and apply it on that door. We need to hurry up and get that blood on that door. The altar is what activates that. So remember this, the most powerful thing to have is not a temple. Listen, you got religious people more focused on the temple today that has no power as opposed to the highest altar in the whole earth on Golgotha. We need to stay attached to that because every time we sprinkle the blood through confession, the word of our testimony, right? We confess the blood. Demons hate that. When we do that, the altar is constantly activated on our behalf. We're remembering the blood of Yeshua on his altar of sacrifice. It's as if that altar stands over your door where there's not even an angelic power that will come near that altar. Death has to go. Give him a praise if you believe that you've been saved. The altar, the blood, the altar has now arrived and has spoken, and guess what the altar says? I'm just humoring this, okay? I'm kind of narrating. It's as if I could hear the altar saying, he told you to let my people go. He told you to let my people go. We'll do it now. It's too late now. The blood has been applied. When the blood's applied, it's too late. When the altar is speaking, it's too late. That's all that had to be spoken was, he told you to let my people go. You guys should be out of your seat. They're throwing your chairs up and excited because he did it for you. He did it for me. So Israel later had gone astray. You guys know the whole story. From the life-sustaining covenant commands that Yah Elohim gave to them. And what happened? It ushered them into exile. Over centuries, we departed from the good ways of Yahweh. Yahweh tried to bring us back again and again, but like a wayward son and daughter, we would not listen. Right, Jeroboam and Rehoboam? Our only hope was to return to the ancient paths, the cycles of righteousness established at Mount Sinai that Jeremiah spoke of in chapter 6, verse 16. Returning was not so easy after being entrenched, as I said earlier, in bondage, the bondage of sin that had been for so long. But nothing, look to your neighbor and say nothing. Nothing's impossible with Elohim. Teshuvah, repentance, returning to the covenant starts inwardly. It starts on the inside and then flows outwardly to the rest of the entire body. And this is why all the appointed times, say appointed times, we are responsible to teach the people the very covenant requirements. Passover's a covenant meal. I know we all have family and friends. We would love for them to come, but are we doing a good service or a disservice for them? We don't judge hearts at all, but they've got to examine themselves in advance to say, hey, it's like a presentment, getting married. You don't just say, I'm going to take this wife and consummate marriage when you never presented to her first in order for her to accept it After she accepts what you presented, then there's a blood sealing. And according to Galatians and the Torah, once blood seals a covenant, you can't add or take away from that. It is done. That's how powerful that is. And then after the blood ratification of that, the sealing of the covenant, you have what's called the highest level of that covenant relationship. It's a covenant confirming meal. So this inward and outward change of the heart has a term known for thousands of years, you guys. You ready? It's called being born again. It's not a new thing. Nicodemus, you being a teacher of the Torah, you mean to tell me you don't know what it means to born again? So that means being born again is taught way back in the beginning. Even as far back as way in the beginning, chapter 1, 2, and 3 of Genesis, but chapter 5, you could see the distinction. It's very clear. Ezekiel 16:4 says, as for your birth, on the day you were born, your navel cord was not cut, nor were you washed in water for cleansing, and you were not rubbed with salt at all, nor wrapped in a cloth at all. No eye felt sorry for you to do any of these for you. I have compassion on you. But you were thrown out into the open field, to the despising of your soul on the day that you were born. How many people, when you accepted the Messiah, it just seemed like the friends kept flooding in? Oh my gosh, we've been waiting to see you all. No, it's like people are like, who are you now? Seems like you're alone. When I passed by you and saw you trampled down in your own blood, I said to you while you were in your issues, when you were engulfed, drowning in the issues of your life, whether self-inflicted or afflicted by no choice. He said, I saw you in your blood alone. And he said, I said to you, live. 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 Hello, live. He said, live. And I said to you in your blood, he said it twice, live. The Passover, born-again process severed generational curses, generational iniquity, and generational forbidden altars with their idol demon masters that sit upon them. The Passover, born-again process severs that. I have murderers in my family. I'm severed from that. Drug addicts in the family, severed from that. I don't mean that you push them down. No, your presence will either draw them or drive them. We all come from a dysfunctional family. We've been severed and brought into a royal seed line. I can't get that out of my head. Powerful. We are real kings and priests. I'm going to get a tattoo. No, I'm just kidding. Look at all the young ones like, oh, I knew they were cool. No. Leaving Mitzrayim, Israel received their new birth, their salvation freely, and was being prepared to meet their king on the mountain that would burn with holy fire and saturated with his presence and his passion. There was nothing, look to your neighbor and say nothing, that we could do then or now to ever deserve this free gift from above. That's the Torah. Think about this for a moment. The very actions performed to the Lamb while temporarily domiciling on Egypt, Mitzrayim, while on Goshen, released, listen, an unrelenting power that touched the firstborn of man and animal of all the Egyptians. That is mind-staggering and mind-blowing. Life, say life. Life is only through the blood. Life is only through the blood. The power of the Lamb that was slain, you guys, commands the attention of the world and all who live upon it, period. The power of the Lamb takes the once enslaved Hebrews and inducts each man, woman, and child through the corridors of the spiritual umbilical cord and through the blood-stained doors of the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. And this is why we recline as kings and as priests, at Passover. Israel once worked as slaves for no wages, none. Everything was taken from them to build the monstrosity, statues, and pagan things of Egypt of that time. No wages, and now reclining at Passover. I can't get that out of my head, man. Oh, excuse me, brothers and sisters. Reclining, knowing that you've been freed. You know what? If you've never been in bondage, you'll never really cherish freedom. I hear people, they can't wait to get to this country, right? They see what you guys go through is nothing. Try to come into our country. When you know you were freed from bondage, goodness gracious. So let's look at this word for induction. Induction, I found this so powerful, and I'm going to try to, Abba, give me the wisdom to be like Pastor Dave. Give me the wisdom to communicate what I'm going to communicate is what I'm saying. Give Pastor Dave a big hand clap. Come on. The Hebrew word for induction, there's actually two of them. The first one is called giyus. Say giyus. And it means recruitment, induction, okay? To recruit. So this is we have been inducted into the priesthood of the Messiah. Also, the Hebrew word hashra'ah. Say hashra'ah. Hashra'ah means it's induction as well. Immersion into water. That's interesting. And it also means an institution. So when you look at giyus, counting that word itself, it has the same numerical prophetic system built into it for two other Hebrew phrases, which is hakohen, the priest, and kehunah, the priesthood. So what is the Messiah inducting us into? He's the priest, inducting us into his priesthood. When? At Passover. When you eat that Passover meal, you can't go run to Walmart and buy Easter baskets. That's it. It's a done deal. I'm being serious. You know why? Because he's jealous. You cannot go and grab your new founded identity now and say, I'm going to go sit that next to Dagon. Dagon's going to fall face forward the first time. And then when all those people that knew you, so-and-so, right, the one from before, they're going to go say, pick that up. You're going to pick it up. It's going to fall again, and now it's going to lose its head. You cannot go back. There should be the statement should not be, hey, you can't go back there. It should be like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. Hashra'ah is what Yeshua did for us during the Passion Week. He presented the immersion sequence for the bride and all who would desire to come into covenant with him. The Hebrew word hashra'ah, say hashra'ah. When you just read that Hebrew word the opposite way, let me see, oh yeah, here we go. This word hashra'ah, where are you at? Right here. Well, you just read it this way. That's it here, right to left Hebrew. You have ha'aresha, which means the betrothal of the bride. So the induction into the priesthood is really the betrothing of the Melchizedek bride. So watch this. I'm going to just communicate this as best as I can. So in the beginning, Adam was taken from the dust of the Ha'adamah, right? Can you guys say that? Say that. Ha'adamah. So if Adam is taken out of Ha'adamah, right? Here's Adam, and this is Ha'adamah, right? Ha'adamah. If you take Adam out, you're left with just two hays. Those are the bookends of something. So there's a space there. So the ground became really, it was the altar. The first Adam was a walking altar. He was a walking authority. So when the Messiah, what he did in the induction process is Something has to fill the gap now. Well, what is it going to be? Hashra'ah and ha'aresha, which is the betrothing immersion of the bride into the altar throne of the redeeming King Yeshua. It's hidden way back in the beginning. In Genesis chapter 1, he concealed forever, leolam vaed, right? Olam is elem and it also means concealment. He concealed inside of his altar. You guys, listen, please, please, please. He concealed in his altar the betrothal of the bride, and when they pierced his side on his altar, it's as if the waters of bringing that forth had come forth out of him. Is that too much? The betrothing immersion of the bride into the altar of the Messiah. The bride has been given, listen, this is so beautiful. Abba just downloaded all of this in me the past couple of weeks. The bride has been given a seat at the altar. I call them altar thrones. At the altar throne next to her husband, King Redeemer Yeshua. It was hidden in the beginning. I think that's beautiful. Adam was to return, remember, to the dust of this Adama. The dust became, I don't even know if I should have brought this out, but it is what it is. The dust that Adam was created from, that same dust, they were particles of light. Those were to be the children of Adam and the woman. But when they fell, entropy immediately hit everything. Those light particles became dirt. Adam and Eve, instead of moving from place to place with their light body, the woman is woman, Eve is the name after, all of a sudden they slow down and they're stationary. Now that everything changed. Can you guys visualize that? Everything slowed down the way we are now. That's heavy stuff. He returned. The Messiah comes. The dust that would become the children lost at sea. We see the patterns today. And the last Adam came with the Melchizedek remedy. He came to redeem. He returned to gather the dust. The sages say this. They call the dust, you ready? Sparks of light. And there's a term they use, I'm not going to get into it, it's called tzimtzum, the shattering of vessels in order to obtain the sparks of light that are everywhere. They're the dust particles, supposed to be the children. Well, guess what? The revelation was hidden in the beginning. In order for children of light to become, the Redeemer had to come. The last Adam had to come in order for that to transpire. So looking at this, when we think about this, the numerical connection with both of these revelations of betrothal, of the bride, and so on and so forth is the same for the Hebrew word tikva, hope. So the betrothing process of the bride that is seen in the revelation of Passover and her position next to him is embedded in the hope of glory. In the hope of glory. Tikva. Did you know tikva is another word related to mikvah, like an immersion? He immersed us into the hope of glory. This is huge. This is huge what he did. This is what he did. We have our hope in him. We have a hope. Look to your neighbor and say, I have hope. Passover is the season that hope is made alive in the face of hopelessness. Not only is the word for betrothal seen here, but the root of it also means this. The root of the betrothal, eresh, that's the root of it. It means to express a trust that has been in place. For me, that blew my mind. It means to express the trust, meaning this. When you go to court and the judge is trying to take you down and trying to accuse you of being something that you're not, you express the trust of your living soul, and now the jurisdiction is out of that courtroom of accusation, and you are a free man. Yeshua came to express the trust that was given way back in the beginning in the Garden of Eden. And he came to reestablish the trust fund for the children of the kingdom called our inheritance. He's the true trust protector. Would you guys agree with that? So I want to look at something. We're going to look at something really quick pertaining to an individual way back that I mentioned earlier named Nicodemus. His name is, and Pastor Dave mentioned Nicodemus the other week on one of your teachings, Nakdimon. Say Nakdimon. Actually has several meanings to his name. One of them means to pierce the right arm. The other one means innocent of bloods. Innocent of bloods. That's just interesting. And Nakdimon, or Nicodemus, as it's commonly known, was someone on a high-ranking Pharisee, and he came to Yeshua at night. So I want to keep that in mind. His name also is connected to a phrase that means this: clarity of pronunciation, or to rightfully divide something up, and in this case, the word of truth. The Messiah himself did something at his table. He would break the bread, right, and divide it amongst his apostles. Nicodemus was one of the Pharisees, as I have mentioned. He came down and he was drawn towards the very Lamb of Elohim slain before the foundation of the world. He was seeking that. Nicodemus was seeking this. Nicodemus, one of the Pharisees. The message of the Lamb, when communicated, and this is the point of Nicodemus, will impact the heart of those who have been entrenched in the traditions of men. The power of the blood brings down any wall of separation. And could it be that this leader, Nicodemus, was a voice for silent Jerusalem? Could it be that the one in Nakdimon, innocent of bloods, could he be the one representing a silent Jerusalem engulfed in stone artifacts, thinking that they're getting the attention of the Creator? It could be. Well, what do you know? His name has the same value as Ha Moriah. There was a connection to it. It would be outside the gates of this temple that the one would be pierced through who was innocent. He was innocent. Look to your neighbor and say, we must never forget that. And we must always remember. We must never forget. We must always remember who it is that the ancient Passover pointed to, which is Yeshua HaMashiach. Paul said in 1 Corinthians, he said this still rings in my mind and my spirit, man. He said this: when you do this, that's staggering. This is just me. Can I be transparent? I will never go back to traditions of men. Ever. Not even with appointed times. I don't mind at all. I don't mind the fellowship. You guys know, right? We're all family. But I am so geared towards the Mashiach and what he came to do. It's way more powerful. Imagine teaching the little ones about coming out of Mitzrayim and immediately attaching them into the powerful prophetic message of what Yeshua did. From the young ones up. Imagine what they will be. They're going to surpass us all. Would you guys agree with that? We have little ones in here today. Isn't that what we want? We want that for them. So during the season of Passover, many begin to struggle, you guys. Many begin to struggle with blood. It's the truth. They struggle with the blood of lambs. You got a lot of Messianic communities want to sacrifice lambs now and then burn them. We've heard this for years. Burn this stuff in their backyard. Well, that's an abomination. How do we know that? In Egypt, they did that then. They burned everything. Once the temple took place, the Creator said, what? My name is there. You bring everything there. Do not do it in your own gates anymore. You bring everything here. You guys remember that? So anything outside that, trust me, I had hate mail about a week and a half. Anything outside that is in the category of an abomination because you're creating an alternative altar that the Creator says do not do. Let's look at this word for Mitzrayim, Egypt. Mitzrayim, well, what do you know, is seen 611 times in the Scripture. Egypt, Mitzrayim, is seen 611 times in the Scripture, which happens to be the value of the word for Torah. You see, the world is totally against the Torah of the Most High. The world knows that the people that come to that, they'll no longer be slaves for them, because his Torah is freedom. It keeps you free from getting back into bondage. Also, 6:11 is the same for Bnei Yisrael, the sons or the children of Israel. Mitzrayim was used to bring forth or to give birth, if I could say that, to a covenant people called Israel, and then make the journey to Mount Sinai and be presented with the royal priesthood covenant status, which are the covenant stones that were given called his Torah. But not only this, the drawing near of Israel was important. What does James say? Draw near to Elohim and he will draw near to you. The Hebrew word is called karav. Karav means to come close or to draw near, and the word karban, karav, karban, is the same family word that has to do with the entire sacrificial system, or in this case, pertaining to Passover, it's talking about a sacrifice. So this should be noted that the initial lamb in Egypt was a sacrifice. Yeshua HaMashiach, he offered himself up as a sacrifice, fulfilling this. He was our korban. He was our karban. He was our sacrifice. So I have a question. Didn't Yeshua come to restore all things? Yes, he did. So we find another powerful insight with this word korban. It's the same value equivalent to the Hebrew word meshiv, which means to restore, restoration, or as you could see, I don't think I have it up there, to restore a nation, to restore the nation. Passover is also about restoring the nation. It was a promise given to Abraham. And I'm going to move ahead. Let's look at some parallels with Yeshua as the Passover lamb. I'm going to kind of run through this. It's probably the next couple slides. You guys could see that up there where I'm going to start on the 10th day. Probably a couple slides up maybe. That matzah, boy, it'll slow us down. I'm telling you. Where's that moror? And the horseradish too. Look at this. On the 10th of the first month, the lamb is picked and examined for 4 days. So I brought some things that are beginning stages of learning for us all that we probably know already, but if not, just bear with me in case someone didn't know this. Yeshua was examined for 4 days, from the 10th to the 14th. Between the 10th and the 11th, Yeshua, in his role as the Messiah and King, he entered Jerusalem on a donkey, fulfilling Zechariah 9 with Matthew 21, verse 5. Also within rabbinic writings, the rabbis say that if the nation of Israel is righteous and they keep the Torah, this is what the rabbi says, just an interesting thought, okay? They said that the Messiah would return on a horse as king. But he can't, if they said, if not, if the nation of Israel is not doing what the Creator says, right, then he'll come riding in on a donkey. Well, go figure that. He came riding in on a donkey. He was making a statement saying, you guys are still wayward. I've come to redeem you. If Israel's unrighteous and the Messiah returned on a donkey as the Mashiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant. On the 11th, Yeshua, in his high priestly role, just follow. This is like the climax up to where we're going here. Yeshua, in his high priestly role, cleanses the temple that was prostituting herself for money. The scriptures, you can read them, they're there. This was a Melchizedek role to do. That's why he was turning the tables over, and what did he do? He created a lash, right? Well, that lash is known for the whipping. It's in even rabbinic writings. The whipping he did, they said that's what the high priest did on the Day of Atonement. He would whip his finger with blood. The Messiah was doing the same thing in the temple, making multiple statements, but making the claim that I am the atonement coming up in here. You've made my Father's house a house of merchandise instead of a house of sons and daughters. My house, my Father's house shall be a house of prayer. So he came making a statement. On the 12th, Yeshua's role as prophet teaches at the temple synagogue, revealing his identity as the Lamb and soon coming Lion. Is it okay to do this history? I got to come on from Pastor Dave, a yeah from Ruth, 2 yeahs from Ruth, and everybody just, okay, we're going to do this. On the 13th into the 14th, Yeshua, remember there's different calendars, so whatever. The 13th into the 14th, Yeshua has the covenant meal with his 12 and heads to Gethsemane, actually singing psalms. How many people know that he sang songs? He sang, I think that they call them the Hillel songs, right? There's 115 and 118, something like that. And he ends with Psalm 118. Why don't you read that when it reveals who he is? He's singing, revealing who he is. You know that what we sing reveals who we belong to? Uh-oh. It got real quiet over here. I said who we sing to reveals who we belong to. Let's move along. When I feel the heat coming from the audience, it's time. Some people are like, I got to go to the restroom, right, Ash? She knows I'm playing. On the 14th, Yeshua was crucified upon a special tree that was a token of equity from the garden trust. It was a sapphire branch. And then he was buried in a sacred tomb that was never used before. The 15th, the nation eats their Passover. We see this going into the 15th, a war between day and night without anyone knowing but the Creator. The 15th, the tomb is sealed by the temple guard, not by the Romans. It was the temple guard that arrested him in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's interesting, right? Those claiming to be sons of Aaron. The Levitical priesthood covered the tomb with a stone as if they were acknowledging that their system was also as this stone, only to conceal for a season until the genuine one would arrive. Interesting. The 16th, the women, they buy spices for the completion of the anointing of the body of Yeshua and come to the tomb later after Shabbat is concluded. On the 17th, this year, the day was a Sabbath. The women kept Shabbat, and they even waited. Those that say the Sabbath is done away with, if it was not important, why did the Messiah even wait until the Shabbat ended? Did he not wait till it was? On the 17th, when Shabbat was over, the Mashiach was resurrected and the tomb emptied, with the exception of his former garments that had his seat attached to them. Should we wear tzitzit? You can if you want, that's fine. But it's interesting how the scriptures really make it clear that his garments were folded neat in the tomb. Isn't that something? Just think about it. These are just some thoughts as we go through that history. So the Mashiach enters Jerusalem. Remember, he enters as king. Zechariah says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion," or Tzion. "Shout, O daughters of Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes to you. He is just, having salvation. He's lowly, riding upon a donkey." I know the King James says something else, but we have little ones. I don't want them to think it's something else. But Mom and Daddy said that. Just kidding. Would they say donkey? Yes. "And upon a colt and a foal of a donkey." Oh my goodness. This word for donkey from its Hebrew origin is called chomer. And its root word is chomer. It means matter, clay, even represents the natural world. And it's another word, chamar, for leaven. Isn't that interesting? Yeshua came riding on this donkey, representing this leavened world as his servant. Imagine that the king is commanding the leavened world, "You will crucify me. You will crucify me." Think about that. He was crucified by a leavened world, unleavened of the kingdom, but he came taking that on himself in our place. Isn't that something? He comes lowly, riding on a donkey, chomer. But the next time he comes with a fiery sword out of his mouth, according to Revelation. Well, what do you know? When you read chomer the other way, it's romach, which means a spear. The entire manifestation of Yeshua was coming to pierce the darkness of this world and to make a transition to things going back to the beginning. He came to undo everything that had been done because of the fall of man. He went, remember, into the waters as the king. Waters in Scripture are symbolic also. They speak of people and nations as well as a natural world. In the waters is our king. Our king went in the waters. He was immersed here with us. He didn't have to come here. He was immersed into this world like one of us. So he went into the waters as the king. And what did he tell John? We must get this done in order to fulfill all righteousness. And you guys already know, he enters the waters as a Melech. He comes out in ascension as the righteous king, our Melchizedek Cohen Hagadol. Does that make sense? Only the Melchizedek himself could have fulfilled the priestly duty of Passover. No other high priest could have done it. And that's why you guys have heard me say this before. Here's a question. How could Yeshua be the atonement when he died on Passover and not Yom Kippur? When he said, remember the Father said to do what? Hear him. And then Yeshua said to do, say it, to do. Okay, I'm going to call on some names right now. The Father said, Yeshua said to do this in remembrance of him. So here he is being crucified, and the last thing he says is a Yom HaKippurim statement. It is finished. It is finished. It is finished, he said. At that moment, I have a vivid imagination sometimes. At that moment, when it went dark, there's only one other day that is called the day of great darkness. It's Yom Kippur. When it got dark and the earth shook, all creation was out of order even more so. Why? Passover and the Day of Atonement kissed each other. The Lamb opened up the way for the blood of atonement that was inside of him to speak and bring about an atonement, ushering in our kingship and priesthood in him on Passover. No wonder the goats of Yom Kippur were no longer accepted for 40 years from that year forward. From that year forward, the rabbis today and the religious people in Israel trying to get people back into Judaism and this Ashkenazi deception. It's a big deception, guys. It's a major deception. Hurry up, let's fly the Jews to Israel. This ain't the time to go there. Israel is not a state. We're supposed to be a state of being called a nation. So the crucifixion takes place upon the mountain of olives on an olive tree. Is this okay? You guys give me 30 more minutes? How many people give me 30 minutes? It took place on an olive tree. You guys have heard this before. That's why you were able to hear, right? The olive trees were pretty big. I've never been to Israel, but I've seen pictures. Some of them grow massive, right? Josephus says that during that time, Israel was wanting for olive trees, meaning there was not enough for what? They were crucifying people on them. You can put up to 4 or 5 people on one olive tree. So the three that were they were all, the Messiah is crucified in the middle, the other thief on this side on the same tree. There was not 3 crosses. It was one tree. That's why they were able to gasp for air and speak with them. Just a thought. But we're going to look at this right now. And I'm just going to read bits and pieces of this because he was crucified on a tree. But that tree is believed. I'm going to be safe with what I'm saying. I'm not going to be dogmatic, even though I totally believe what I'm about to read to you guys. It is believed that that olive tree was a result of something that was given to Adam after the fall. Can we read about it? Is that okay? You don't mind if I read from the book of Jasher? Jasher 77, starting at verse 38. I'm going to just read a few verses. I might skip around here. And afterwards Moses went into the garden of Reuel, which was behind the house, and he prayed to Yahweh his Elohim, who had done mighty wonders for him. How many people read from the book of Jasher before? How many people like actually never heard of that? It's okay. Stone her. Just kidding. No, it's all right. Some people have not. That's fine. But we're going to look at this here. This is very interesting. It just, a lot of the extra biblical books were really part of the quote unquote, I don't want to use canon because that's a Catholic thing they did, but it was part of the compilation of the Bible. So the Bible we should have really had would probably be like from the ground, like right, imagine dragging that to church. Did you bring your Bible? Of course I did. Look at how big my calves are from pulling this thing. All right, there. Now I just got you guys to wake up. And let's keep going. Verse 39. And it was that while he prayed, he looked opposite to him, and behold, a sapphire branch was placed in the ground. You guys know who Reuel is, right? It's Yethro. It's Yethro, the prince, the high priest of Midian. So this is in his backyard now. Is this okay to read? I want to make sure I'm not losing anyone because it fits with what I'm going to give you guys here. A sapphire branch in the ground, which was planted in the midst of the garden. Interesting. Verse 40. And he approached the branch, and he looked, and behold, the name of Yahweh Elohim Tsebaot was engraved upon it, written and developed upon the branch. That phrase there is crazy. Develop means it grew and became part of the branch. Imagine the name Yahweh Elohim Tsebaot, the master, the general of all the armies of heaven. It grew into the branch. Just follow me now. Is this okay? And he read it. Let's see. And he read it and stretched forth his hand, and he plucked it like a forest tree from the thicket, and the branch was in his hand. Everyone else was trying to do it. Like the movie Excalibur comes from this. I'm not kidding. They pull these things from ancient texts of Israel. All these people trying to pull that branch out, right? Moses just picked it up and was like, hey, I found this thing. It was in your... And this is the branch which will work all the works of our Elohim, with which all the works of our Elohim were performed after he had created heaven and earth, and all the hosts of them, the seas, the rivers, and all their fishes. So this branch is connected to creation. Please follow me, because this has everything to do with the sacrifice of the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. So creation is coupled with this interesting sapphire branch that came from the garden. Just follow me now. I know people don't read these books. That's fine. I just wanted to bring it out to just make some sense of some stuff. And when Elohim driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, he took the branch in his hand and went and tilled the ground from which he was taken. And the branch came down to Noah and was given to Shem and his descendants. This is a Melchizedek staff. Until it came into the hand of Abraham, the Hebrew. And when Abraham, this is in the book of Jasher, had given all that he had to his son Isaac, he also gave him this branch. This is the order of the Melchizedek line right now. You guys seeing this? This is powerful stuff. He also gave Isaac the branch. And when Jacob had fled to Padan Aram, he took the branch, into his hand. And when he returned to his father, he did not leave it behind him. Also, when he went down to Egypt, he took it. When Jacob went to Egypt, he took it in his hand. And just to make a long story short, I'm going to jump ahead here. Let me make a long story short, going all the way up to King David. This branch, sapphire branch, would wind up being the staff that Moses had, right? That would be used in the hands of Aaron to do the miracles that we see, the judgments that Passover reflects on in Egypt. So this branch that was used coupled with the voice and the word that created all things, is present in the hand of Moses right now. And he hands it to Aaron, the high priest. It's the same branch staff that budded in the face of Korah. I can say a whole lot right there. It's the same branch that would wind up being placed inside of the Ark of the Covenant, but yet when this branch winds up coming to King David is the one who's last recorded having this, and he goes up to Mount. So you guys heard I preached this on a Shabbat before. I mentioned the same things. King David is the one that transplants this up on the mountains of Moriah, and it is believed that's the olive tree that it grew into that Yeshua was crucified on. I'm the only excited one. Hallelujah. Like I said, it is believed. I'm getting some looks like, what is he talking about? So let's go to the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah is asked a question pertaining to this branch. And the word of Yahweh came to me saying, what do you see, Yirmiyahu? And he said, I see a branch of an almond tree. And Yahweh said to me, you have seen well, for I am watching over my word to do it. I missed it too. I missed it. I've read that. I missed it too. Let me tell you why. Jeremiah is given the revelation that the branch would wind up being the word. You have seen well, Jeremiah. What'd you see? The branch. Exactly. That's what you've seen. And now my branch will be multiplying fruit. Why? Because I am watching over my word called the branch. Hallelujah. So Jeremiah is given the connection to this staff or this branch. The word is the branch, and the branch is the staff, and the staff is the sapphire branch that came from the tree of life that was transplanted in the mountains of Moriah in order for us to even commemorate a Passover. King David couldn't build the temple, but he did something. He transplanted this very branch. In 2 Samuel 15, 29 to 30, verse 32, I skipped a couple slides. With King David, I'm just going to give this to you, climbing the summit to Mount Olives in 2 Samuel 15. And there he would plant the staff or the branch. Verse 32, this is the place where Elohim is worshipped. All these keys. David goes up. There's no record of David coming down with anything in his hand anymore. It's believed that this sapphire staff branch was in his hand last, according to the scriptures. This branch became the seed that would grow into the highest altar on earth, on Golgotha, for the Lamb to come and shed his blood for us. Hallelujah. King David would later make his way to Jerusalem and transplant this there. The sapphire branch was the investment of our king for a broken and wayward people. Imagine that the Creator broke off a branch from the tree of life and said, you're going with them too. Did you hear that? Not only are you going, because the tree of life could speak. The tree of life, everything in the garden is alive. It's not just, oh, look at the grass. No, that grass is going to talk to you somehow. Everything in it. But why do you think the New Agers worship nature now? Everything's a distortion of what always has been. You don't worship that. You command it. Adam, take dominion, Adam, over all the earth. I'm giving it to you as a gift. I'm trusting you what belongs to me. Adam. Even the Midrash says that the kings preserved and protected the rod that budded. King David would later be the one to transplant that. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 19, it says this, having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Yeshua, by a new and living way which he has consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. His flesh is the lamb's skin. And having a high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together. 2 Samuel 7:12 says, and when your days be fulfilled and you shall sleep with your fathers, I will set up your seed after your prophecy given to King David, which shall proceed out of your bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever and ever. You should be saying amen. Say amen. Let's go to Exodus 12:41, that slide there. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, someone say, even the selfsame day. It came to pass that all the host of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. I'm telling you, I'm all messed up right now. When Israel was delivered from Egypt, we were given the same title as a nation as all the angelic hosts of heaven. Look at what it says. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the Sevaot of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. Man, oh man. I'm telling you, as believers, we are more precious than what we think. Our value is through the heavens. Your value is priceless. Your value cannot be purchased with silver and gold. That's why the Father had to bring his own blood here. Then Yeshua said, I am the bread of heaven that has come down. If he doesn't have a seed line from a natural father, where'd his blood come from? Hidden back in the beginning was this revelation of Passover. I'm almost done. And this leaving in haste is concealed back in Genesis. Would you guys agree that we all crossed over from death to life? From darkness to light? We have. This phrase in Exodus 12:41 pertaining to the deliverance of the nation of Israel was concealed in the Adam back in the beginning. Let me move along here. Genesis 2:21 says, and Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh thereof. And the rib, I'm reading from the King James, the Hebrew is more powerful. And the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from Adam made he a woman. And the rib that he took from Adam made he a woman. Boy, oh boy, I could go somewhere right now, but I'm not. Yes. And brought her unto the man. And Adam said, this Pa'am in Hebrew, it's Pa'am. You know what that means? This time she is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. What was the other time then, Adam? They don't translate Pa'am. Look it up. Pa'am means now this time. She's bone of my bone. That means something else was there, but we're going to leave it alone. I just found that interesting to throw that out there, that unleavened message that insight, that unleavened insight I gave you guys right now. And flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, or no, never mind. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of the man. Back to Exodus 12:41 again. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass. Let's look at something here. Adam's bone and the selfsame day of Israel's deliverance are co-equal. The same Hebrew word for the delivering day for all of Israel is the exact same Hebrew word for what came out of Adam that would become the bride. And it's etzem. Self-same is etzem. That means bones. The same day of Israel's deliverance, when it happened, is the same word for Adam's bride to be. So what is concealed within the beginning was the manifestation of the bride who would be brought forth out of a deep sleep or an exile in a sense. Was not Adam, give him a praise, hallelujah. Was not Adam put into a tardeme, a deep sleep? The dominant times you see tardeme, it's dealing with a covenant people. Adam was put into a tardeme, a trance-like state. Abraham was placed in a tardeme, a trance-like state. Why? A covenant was being made. The Mashiach caused all of the religious system in Jerusalem to be in a tardeme state in order for a covenant-confirming meal to take place. Even Satan was bewildered. He stood there, and Satan was in a deep sleep called the exile within Judas. To be in a fallen state is to be in exile. So even Satan had to come into a place of tardeme to submit to the covenant plan of the Most High, because there was nothing he could do. Hidden way back in the beginning. What is concealed within the beginning was the manifestation of the bride of Adam. The numerical value of etzem for the self-same day and the bone. So when Israel was delivered, all of collective Israel, oh, you dry bones in Ezekiel 37, the same thing on a demonstrative level is going to happen. When the dry bones of Israel gathered from the valley of nations everywhere and brought together, we're going to see on a demonstrative level of the last Adam, the manifestation of the bride of the Messiah. And guess what? The kingdom message will be closed up, just like the side of Adam. He closed up the basar, the good news of Adam. It takes a cutting in order for a good message to come out. You've got to be cut in order to have something to say. Adam was cut. The Mashiach was cut because he had something to say. And what did he have to say? What did he have to say? Nafshela kala, which means be made whole, my bride. Up on that tree, up on his altar. Give him a praise. I'm going to close right now. Let me just give you something. I'll end with this. Let me end with this. The last 3 slides. Is that all right? Clap your hands. Let's give Abba a big clap. Man, he's so good, isn't he? Isn't he good? So Adam's sides were opened, right? And in Genesis 2:21, his sides. The Hebrew word is mitzalotav, mitzalotav, and has the same prophetic value for the Hebrew phrase Seder Melchizedek Nachal, which means the inheritance of the Melchizedek Seder. I feel like jumping. That's me. I don't care. Hidden in the Seder, where there's no place in all of Tanakh for the Hebrew word Seder pertaining to Passover. It's seen one time in the book of Job. It has nothing to do with Pesach. But Seder is a Hebrew word that means to bring complete order. Yeshua came after the order of Melchizedek to set the table of a Melchizedek betrothal that took place some 2,000 years ago. Give him a shout. Hallelujah. I'm gonna do these last. You guys give me like 5 minutes. I really hate saying that. Aren't you guys glad you ate first? Like, remember, the bone of the lamb will never be broken. I was in tears. Maybe it was just ministering to me, but I don't know. But not a bone of the lamb could be broken in Egypt, remember? Neither any other Passover. After that, remember when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they never observed Passover again for 40 years. Did you know that? They didn't have one Passover until Joshua chapter 5. So that means every son that was born was never circumcised into covenant. They were all uncircumcised in the wilderness. You know why? You can't circumcise a son into a broken covenant. He'll be totally separated from the Creator. They broke covenant in the wilderness. Therefore, for 40 years, there was no circumcision, no Passover, till Yahushua came on the scene. This message was concealed back in Genesis 2:21, the closing up. You could not break the bone of the lamb. Say, you can't break the bone of the lamb. Say it again. You can't break the bone of the lamb. Why did the Creator himself make sure that the lamb back in Egypt's bones were not broken? Who cares if the bone, what if the meat's so good? You guys know how you do with T-bone steaks and all. You guys wish you could eat that bone. Sucking on that bone, all the seasoning in the bone and the bone marrow. Everyone's like, oh, you know what I'm saying. But why not let a bone be broken? Because it was a prophecy going back to Genesis chapter 2 that we just read, and then that pointed to the coming of the Messiah, where they came to him to break his legs, and literally, because they would beat up on some kind of a place where they could push up and breathe. You guys know all this. So you break their legs, they're going to suffocate. The ultimate thing of crucifixion is suffocation. But the prophetic insight was the Messiah was he made so many statements without saying a word. Did you hear what I said? He said so many things. Usually when he would speak clearly was when he did not say anything. But it's what he did. He spoke so loud by what he did and how he lived. So the Messiah's legs were not broke. Why? He was saying, you could break me. Like Dave did a good demonstration, his back to the door. You can inflict my back, but I'm covering my children. Like a mother hen does her chicks. So he was saying, you could break me, but you'll never break her. My bone of my bone cannot be broken. My bone cannot be broken. He laid his life down for his bride. He says, you can break me, but you can't break her. I'm broken for her. I'm pierced for her. I'm bruised for her. I'm torn for her. I'm beaten for her. I'm pierced through and striped for her. I'm crucified for her. I'm buried and went to the depths of the grave for her. I rose from the dead for her. We don't need an animal system for our atonement. That Jerusalem at that time was in a nidah state, bleeding out, because all who thirst for that only worsen the hemorrhaging. The staff of resurrection held the word made flesh, and we are redeemed from death by the Passover lamb slain before the world ever was. The Passover lamb kept the blood of atonement hidden in silence until the silent lamb bled on Golgotha, earth's highest, loftiest altar. The blood of atonement spoke through the ascending one. the Lamb of Elohim, our Passover, as well as our Lion of Judah. In Genesis 49:10, it says, the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes, or until the obedient return of the people has taken place. It's time to come to the king's scepter table, to the altar that alters the corruption of that second temple influence born out of idolatry and rebellion. It's time to come to the table of our king, where his vassal kings and priests sit with him and dine with him in a sacred covenant. It's time to remove the garments of bulls and goats and lies and excuses and come. Let us return to our king. On the mountain where he laid his life down for us during the Passover season some 2,000 years ago. He will return because he promised this, and will join our king at the marriage supper of the Lamb. What is searched for, you guys? Symbolically, the traditional Passover is the afikomen, remember? Has different meaning. It's actually a Greek word. It's not even a Hebrew word. You can use Hebrew letters to capture the pronunciation, which I did. The afikomen, which can be defined as well as I will return. Well, what do you know? Afikomen has the same value as korseh, which means the royal throne. So the afikomen is symbolic of the return of the coming king. If he's returning to be here with his bride, then that means the throne that is at the right hand is coming to earth. We will meet our king again in his royal kingdom. I'm going to put some music on as I read another verse, and then we're going to transition to something. Here, Timothy. Give Timothy a big hand clap, and BJ, because and just press play. I'm going to keep on until we're going to transition, but I want you guys to really engage in what Passover is for you. Was this okay for you guys? Matthew 26, verse 26. And as they were eating, Yeshua, he took bread. He took bread. Why don't you guys all grab a piece of bread? Can we get some kind of juice like to each table? I forgot to mention that. As fast as possible. And I'll keep orchestrating as we do that. But I want everyone to grab just a piece of matzah bread. I want to say something pertaining to what happened with Yeshua. As they were eating, turn it up. Perfect. Turn it up. You remember back in the world, say you're going to turn it up? You all know what that meant, right? Turn it up. That's perfect right there, Timothy. He took bread. I want you to hold that. Let's really look at this for a minute. And let's make this personal, okay? He took bread that night that represented him. He broke it and he gave to his disciples. If you have your bread in your hand, raise it up high. I want you to raise it up high, everyone. Raise it up high because you know that he's risen. Just do that. It's just symbolic here. This is not him now. This is not Yeshua. This is just symbolic. The Catholic churches say this is Jesus. This is not Jesus Christ. Stop saying that. Raise it up high. Because guess what? When he rose up, he represented you. And guess what? He said, I'm not ashamed of you. but I've done this and this and this in my life. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm not ashamed of you. But people don't realize what I've done. I know what you've done, and I've come to cover your shame and be embarrassed for you. Raise it up like you believe he raised you up. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's what he said. Blessed are you. Imagine that. He's on earth. And at one time, he was just always there, if I could say it like this without messing stuff up. Imagine that. He's here. He used to be there. This is personal. This is powerful. He said this. He gave. He said, take it and eat it. I want you to eat it. As you're eating it, I don't like to talk with food in my mouth. I want you to picture yourself sitting at his table. He sees what he sees what we're doing. Right, Timothy? He sees what we're doing. He sees us. I said he can see us. If no one even recognize you in your life, guess what? The King sees you. He sees you. He said, take, eat, this is my body. And then he took the cup. Do I have a cup? Just a drop. I won't even tell you what happened in one of the Passovers we did. I was like, oh my God. We had like, I don't know how many people there. It seemed like we had about 1,000 people after the fourth cup, the traditional Passover. I said, no, I can't do this. This is what they did at Passover? No. And then he took the cup. Do we have that up there? We took the cup. Remember, Hakus. All connection to the redemption of the bride. He said, he took the cup and gave thanks. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe. King of the universe. You have given us the life from the vine. You have given us the life of heaven. You've given us your very life. You took your bosom out and sent your life here and your love here and your salvation to me. It's got to be personal. Passover's personal. He said, take this cup, that cup of redemption. And he gave to them, and it was really one cup in their midst. So can we just get the big cup? We all drink from it. He said, take this cup, drink all of it. So if you filled your cup up, down it. They didn't say down it back then, but you know what I mean. He said, drink all of it. Look at what he said. For this is my blood of the New Testament, of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many for the freedom from sin. Remission of sins is the Jubilee. Freedom, Yovelim. That means it's plural. Freedom. That means every form of sin that tries to attach itself like a coronavirus little insect is detached from you. Because his blood entered your life and started detaching what has set us back. But I say unto you, with tears in his eyes, he's looking at his children. And he said, I will not drink of this. I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until, remember Shiloh, Genesis 49:10, until Shiloh comes, until that day when I drink it with you, new in my Father's kingdom. This is called the marriage supper of the Lamb. Give him a big shout and a praise. Hallelujah. 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 We have been forgiven. We have been forgiven. Well, I'm a believer and I still have done this and that. We have been forgiven. Whoever you are in here, I don't care what has happened this week in your life, whatever. Let right now, Abba, we ask right now, let right now forward be brand new. Brand new. Brand new.